"You're dead to me," the Millionaire CEO declared. But when he saw her again after 3 years, he collapsed to his knees. "You're dead to me, Jenna. Dead." The words sliced through the crystal chandeliers and champagne glasses like a knife through silk. "Wait, scratch that," like a gunshot through silence. Every conversation in Boston's Grand Harrington Ballroom died instantly. 200 pairs of eyes turned toward us. Toward me. Standing there in the emerald dress Trevor Ashford had personally selected 3 days earlier. The one he'd said made me look like I belonged in his world. Apparently, I never did. My hand moved instinctively to my stomach. 8 weeks. Twins. The doctor had confirmed it yesterday, with that grainy ultrasound photo now folded in my clutch. 2 tiny heartbeats I'd planned to share with him tonight, after dinner, in the quiet sanctuary of our bedroom. I'd imagined his face transforming with wonder, imagined him dropping to his knees, pressing his ear against my belly like he could already hear them. That future evaporated in the time it took him to say those 4 words. Hi, my wonderful friends. Welcome to Mr. William Chronicles, where every story carries a truth worth holding on to. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button and join this family. Let me speak a blessing over you today. May every woman who's been broken find the strength to rebuild herself piece by piece. May every man who's made mistakes find the humility to become better. And may every heart that's been shattered discover that some things, once broken and mended with intention, become stronger than they ever were whole. Trevor stood 3 feet away, but he might as well have been on another planet. His face twisted with disgust, actual disgust, like I was something rotten he'd discovered in his pristine life. This wasn't the man who brought me coffee in bed every morning, who traced poetry on my skin in the darkness, who proposed on a beach at sunrise 6 months ago. This was a stranger wearing his face. Meeting with Richard Brennan. His voice carried across the marble floors, bouncing off gilded walls, ensuring everyone heard my public execution. Taking envelopes at the harbor side. Making deals with my competitors behind my back. He took a step closer, and I could smell the whiskey on his breath. Did you think I was too stupid to find out? Did you think I'd never discover what you really are? The crowd pressed closer, sensing blood in the water. My throat closed, but I forced words through. "Trevor, please listen to me. Listen." He laughed, harsh and unfamiliar. "I listened for 3 years while you played your part perfectly. The sweet girlfriend from the wrong side of town, so grateful for everything I gave you, so eager to prove yourself." His mother, Constance Ashford, materialized at his elbow like a vulture sensing carrion. Her hand landed possessively on his arm, her mouth curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Richard approached me at a coffee shop last month," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the trembling in my legs. "He offered me money to convince you to sell your shares in the merger deal. I refused immediately. I told him I would never betray you. I was going to tell you about it after your investor presentation because I didn't want to add stress when you were all ready." Convenient excuse. Trevor's interruption hit like a slap. "You didn't want to add stress. You are the stress, Jenna. Do you know what happens at every board meeting? They question why I'm with someone from your..." He paused, and I watched him choose his next word carefully. Too carefully. "Say it," I whispered, but my voice carried in the terrible silence. Something cracked inside my chest. Something that had been holding me together. "Say what you really mean, Trevor. Say what your mother's been whispering in your ear for 3 years. Say it out loud so everyone can hear the truth." His jaw clenched. Something flickered across his face. Shame, maybe, or the ghost of the man I'd loved. But Constance's fingers tightened on his arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his expensive suit, and whatever hesitation existed vanished like smoke. "You're not who I thought you were," he said finally. Each word deliberate, chosen, cruel. Every board meeting, they question my judgment. My investors whisper about gold diggers. My mother has to constantly defend my choices. He gestured vaguely at the crowd, at witnesses to my destruction. "I need you gone. Out of my house, out of my life, out of my world." I'll have your things sent wherever you want them, but I can't look at you anymore without feeling sick." The guests murmured now. Some had the decency to turn away, to give privacy to my public annihilation. Others leaned in closer, smartphones probably recording every moment for their group chats, for their dinner party gossip, for their cautionary tales about girls who reached too high. I thought about telling him right then, about pulling that ultrasound photo from my clutch and showing him the two tiny shadows that proved our love had created something real. About using our children as weapons to force him to listen, to see reason, to remember who we'd been before his mother's poison infected everything. But looking at his face, at the certainty and disgust written there, I knew it wouldn't matter. He'd made his choice. She'd won this war before I even knew we were fighting. 6 months ago, Trevor had knelt in the sand at sunrise and slipped a princess-cut diamond on my finger. He'd quoted Neruda, "I love you without knowing how, or when, or from where," and promised me forever. I pulled that ring off now, the weight of broken promises heavy in my palm. The ballroom held its collective breath as I set it on the nearest table. The soft click of diamond against mahogany sounded like a door closing, like a coffin lid falling, like the death of everything I believed in. "I loved you," I said softly. The words meant only for him, despite our audience of vultures. "I loved you more than I've ever loved anything in my life. I would have walked through fire for you, would have given everything I had and everything I'd ever be." My voice didn't shake anymore. Grief had burned through to something harder, something that would keep me alive when love couldn't. "But you're right about one thing. You are sick. Sick with whatever poison she's been feeding you." I looked at Constance, at her triumphant smile. Sick with mistrust and cruelty, and the kind of weakness that chooses comfortable lies over uncomfortable truth. I stepped back, putting distance between us, between who I'd been and who I'd have to become. "Goodbye, Trevor Ashford. I hope whatever you find to replace me fills the holes better than I could." I walked through that silent crowd with my head high and my spine straight, even though everything inside me was screaming and dying. Faces blurred past, some pitying, some satisfied, some simply curious about the scandal. I didn't look back. If I looked back, I would crumble. And I refused to give Constance Ashford that satisfaction. Behind me, I heard her voice, syrupy with false sympathy. "You're better off, darling. She was never right for our family. Now you can find someone appropriate, someone who understands your world." I pushed through the ballroom doors into cool October air and finally let myself break. My legs gave out. I sank onto a stone bench, great heaving sobs tearing from my chest like something vital being ripped away. 3 years of love, destroyed in minutes. 3 years of building a life together, demolished by lies I couldn't defend against because he'd refused to listen. I pressed both hands to my stomach, to the lives growing there who would never know their father. "I'm sorry," I whispered to them through my tears. "I'm so sorry I chose someone so weak. But I promise you this, I will give you everything. You will never doubt my love. You will never feel unwanted or unworthy." My voice broke, but the promise didn't. "You will know what it means to be chosen every single day of your lives. Because I choose you. I will always choose you." A taxi pulled up at my signal. I gave the driver my address, Trevor's penthouse, though not for much longer. I'd pack only essentials tonight, while he celebrated his narrow escape from the gold digger. Then I'd disappear into a life he would never touch again. Through the taxi window, I watched the glittering gala fade behind me. Watched the world where I tried so desperately to belong vanish into the darkness. Somewhere in that darkness, Trevor was probably already forgetting me. Probably already letting his mother find him someone suitable. Probably already convincing himself he'd dodged a bullet. He would never know what he'd lost tonight. He would never know about the children who would grow up without him. He would never know that my love, once destroyed, could never be resurrected. 3 years carved Trevor Ashford into something sharp and hollow. He stood at the penthouse windows overlooking Boston, amber whiskey catching the last rays of sunlight, watching the city pulse with life he no longer felt part of. Behind him, the Wall Street Journal sat on his marble counter, his face on the cover beneath the headline, "The Ashford Empire: How One Man Tripled His Fortune in 3 Years." The article called him a genius, a visionary, the future of American enterprise. It didn't mention how success tasted like ash in his mouth. His company had exploded after that night at the gala. The hostile takeover he'd been fighting? Defeated spectacularly. Stock value? Tripled. He'd acquired 17 companies, expanded into 6 international markets, built an empire that made his father's legacy look like a lemonade stand. None of it meant anything. Every accomplishment rang hollow, because the one person he'd wanted to share them with was gone, driven away by his own hands, his own weakness, his own willingness to believe comfortable lies over uncomfortable truth. Trevor, darling. Constance's heels clicked across the marble. She'd moved in 6 months after Jenna left, claiming she wanted to support him through his difficult time. She'd never left, gradually taking over his life like a slow-moving infection. "I've arranged dinner with the Morrison family tonight. Their daughter just returned from studying in Paris. Lovely girl, very accomplished. Her family owns half the pharmaceutical distribution on the East Coast." Trevor didn't turn from the window. "Cancel it. You can't keep wallowing in this melancholy." Her voice sharpened with impatience. "It's been 3 years. That woman is gone, and thank God for that. You need to move forward, build a proper family with someone suitable." Trevor's hand tightened around his glass. The impulse to throw it, to watch it shatter against pristine walls, surged through him. But he'd learned to keep everything locked down tight, to show nothing, to feel nothing, because feeling led to remembering, and remembering led to the photograph hidden in his nightstand drawer. "I said cancel it." His voice was flat, dead. Constance's mouth pressed into a thin line. "You're impossible when you're like this. Fine. Eat alone again. Drink yourself into another stupor. But don't come crying to me when you wake up at 40 and realize you've wasted your best years mourning someone who was using you." She left in a cloud of expensive perfume and judgment. Trevor waited until her bedroom door clicked shut before moving to his nightstand. The photograph showed Jenna at the beach, laughing, hair wild in the wind, eyes bright with joy and trust he destroyed. He'd taken this the day after proposing. She'd looked at him like he hung the moon, like he was everything good in the world. He put the photo back and locked the drawer, then locked his heart, preparing for another night of pretending success satisfied him. 1,200 miles away, Jenna Monroe was learning that survival required becoming someone entirely new. The Portland apartment was small but clean, filled with the beautiful chaos of 3-year-old twins. Dinosaur toys scattered across the living room floor. Crayon drawings covered the refrigerator, misshapen flowers and stick figure families. A tower of blocks taller than the children who'd built it teetered dangerously in the corner. Nate and Riley were hurricane forces contained in tiny bodies. They had Trevor's dark eyes and Jenna's warm brown skin, questions that never stopped, and energy that exhausted her daily. "Mama, when is Daddy coming home?" Riley asked from the floor where she was drawing another flower, this one purple with 17 petals. Jenna looked up from her laptop, where she'd been reviewing financial reports for a client. She worked as an independent consultant now, taking contracts she could complete from home while raising her children alone. Money was tight but sufficient. She'd learned to stretch every dollar, to find joy in simple things, to build a life from scraps of dignity and fierce determination. "Your daddy had to go away for work, baby," Jenna said, the lie tasting bitter and worn smooth from repetition. "But he loves you very much." How did you explain to 3-year-olds that their father didn't know they existed, that their grandmother had poisoned him so thoroughly he'd thrown away everything without a second thought? That you tried to tell him, tried desperately to reach him, but his mother had blocked every attempt? "Does he look like me?" Nate asked, abandoning his toy cars to climb into Jenna's lap. "Do I have his eyes?" "You do, baby. You have his eyes and his stubborn chin." Jenna kissed the top of his head, breathing in baby shampoo and innocence. She'd given them pieces of their father through stories, creating a narrative where he was a good man who'd had to leave for important reasons. Better that than the truth, that he'd rejected their mother so viciously she'd fled rather than tell him about them. Will he come visit us? Riley's voice held hope that broke Jenna's heart every time. Someday, maybe. But right now we have each other, and that's enough, right? Both children nodded, but Jenna felt their disappointment like a physical weight. They saw other kids with fathers at the park, heard other children talk about daddies at preschool, felt the absence like a missing limb. After she'd put the twins to bed, after reading 3 stories and singing 2 songs and promising yes, tomorrow they could have pancakes, Jenna sat alone in the darkness and let herself feel the weight of it all. 3 years of single motherhood had carved her into someone unrecognizable. She'd lost the softness Trevor had loved, the easy trust, the openness that made her vulnerable. She'd become efficient and hard and suspicious of kindness, because kindness usually wanted something in return. She'd learned to fix broken toilets and change car oil and negotiate with landlords. She'd learned to do her own taxes and handle medical emergencies alone and survive on 4 hours of sleep. She'd learned that love was a luxury and survival was an art form. She'd learned that the man who destroyed her didn't deserve space in her thoughts. Yet he lived there anyway, a ghost she couldn't exorcise because his face stared at her from their children's eyes every single day. Drop a comment right now. Do you think Trevor deserves a second chance? Or should Jenna keep him out of their lives forever? I want to know what you think because this gets complicated fast. Sometimes late at night, Jenna wondered if he ever regretted his words. Wondered if Constance had found him someone suitable with a right pedigree and connections. Wondered if he was happy in his empire while she struggled to make rent. But mostly she didn't let herself wonder. Wondering led to weakness, and weakness led to breaking. And she couldn't afford to break when 2 small humans depended on her for everything. Her phone buzzed with a reminder about next week's conference. The Hospitality Industry Consortium was hosting a major summit in Seattle, and several clients had encouraged her to attend for networking opportunities. She'd been reluctant. Conferences cost money and time away from the twins, but her neighbor had offered to watch them, and the potential for new contracts was too good to pass up. She needed to grow her business, needed to provide better for Nate and Riley, needed to build security against the precariousness of freelance income. Jenna marked the Seattle conference in her calendar, unaware that fate was about to collide her carefully rebuilt life with the past she'd spent 3 years trying to forget. Unaware that Trevor Ashford had received an identical invitation. Unaware that his company's recent hotel acquisitions made his attendance mandatory. In Boston, Trevor confirmed his attendance to the Seattle conference and poured another whiskey, staring at the locked drawer that held his ghost. In Portland, Jenna closed her laptop and checked on her sleeping children one more time, touching their foreheads like a benediction. Neither of them slept well that night, both moving toward a reunion that would shatter whatever fragile piece they'd managed to construct from ruins. The universe was pulling them back together, indifferent to whether they were ready for the collision. The Seattle Grand Hyatt Conference Center smelled of expensive coffee and calculated ambition. Trevor Ashford moved through the networking session with practiced ease, shaking hands he wouldn't remember, discussing market trends with people whose names escaped him before conversations ended. These events had become performance art, playing the role of successful CEO while feeling hollow inside, saying correct words while meaning none of them. He'd mastered the performance so completely that no one noticed the emptiness behind his smile. The boutique hotel market is evolving faster than anyone predicted, someone said to his left. A supplier whose face Trevor vaguely recognized. Experiential travel is the future. Your acquisition of the Pacific Northwest properties was brilliant positioning. Trevor nodded, offered something about consumer preferences and market research, then excused himself to refresh coffee he didn't want. He was moving toward the refreshment table when he saw her. Time fractured into before and after. Jenna stood across the crowded room, engaged in animated conversation with 2 other professionals. She wore a simple navy dress that moved with her body, her natural hair in soft waves past her shoulders. She looked more beautiful than memory had preserved, but beautiful in a different way, harder somehow, like something precious that had survived fire and emerged as steel instead of gold. She laughed at something someone said, her hand gesturing expressively, and Trevor felt 3 years collapse into nothing. All the carefully constructed walls around her memory crumbled instantly, leaving him standing in a conference room with his heart pounding like he'd run a marathon. Everything he'd buried, all the grief and regret and love he'd tried to kill, surged back with devastating force. Then she turned her head, scanning the room, and their eyes met across the distance. The laughter died on her face. Color drained from her cheeks. She went absolutely still, a deer caught in headlights. Trevor saw recognition, followed immediately by something that looked like panic. Or maybe rage. He started moving toward her before conscious thought caught up with instinct. People parted around him, probably reading intensity on his face and deciding to stay clear. Jenna said something quick to her companions and turned, walking rapidly toward the hallway exit. Her pace was just short of running. Jenna. His voice carried above ambient noise. Heads turned. She walked faster, heels clicking urgently on tile. Trevor caught up with her in the corridor outside the ballroom. His hand reached for her arm instinctively. She yanked away from his touch like it burned, spinning to face him with eyes that held no warmth, no recognition of what they'd once meant to each other. This wasn't the woman who used to curl into his side while watching movies, who used to trace patterns on his chest while they talked about futures that would never exist. This woman looked at him like he was dangerous, like he was something to be avoided at all costs, like he was nothing. "Don't touch me." Her voice was ice. Absolute zero. Colder than anything in nature. "Jenna, please." Trevor held up his hands in surrender, trying to appear non-threatening even as his pulse raced. "I just want to talk. It's been 3 years. Can we just talk for 5 minutes? We have nothing to discuss." She crossed her arms over her chest, defensive body language that spoke volumes. "You made yourself very clear at that gala, remember? You were sick of me, sick of looking at me. Well, congratulations, Trevor. You got exactly what you wanted. Now, let me get back to my work." "I was wrong." The words rushed out, desperate and raw. "I was so completely wrong about everything. My mother lied about you, Jenna. She manipulated the entire situation. She paid people to set you up, to make it look like you were meeting with Richard deliberately." His voice cracked. "I found out later. I should have trusted you. I should have listened instead of believing lies. I'm so sorry." Something flickered across her face. Might have been vindication, might have been pain, but it disappeared quickly, replaced by that impenetrable coldness that was somehow worse than hatred, because it suggested he didn't matter enough to hate. "You're right," she said quietly. "You should have trusted me. You should have known me well enough to realize I would never betray you. But you didn't." She stepped closer, voice dropping to a whisper that hurt more than shouting. "When it came down to choosing between believing in me and believing your mother's poison, you chose her. You chose lies over truth, suspicion over trust, convenience over love." Her words landed like physical blows. "Do you know what it's like to love someone who thinks so little of you?" Jenna continued, her composure cracking just slightly. "To give everything to someone who throws it away based on manufactured evidence? You destroyed me that night, Trevor. You didn't just break my heart. You killed something essential in me, something trusting and hopeful and good. And I will never forgive you for that." "I know." Trevor felt tears burning behind his eyes, but refused to let them fall. "I know I destroyed us. I think about that night every single day. I see your face, hear your voice, remember the way you looked at me before you walked away. It haunts me. You haunt me. I haven't been able to move on because part of me died when you left." "Good." Jenna's smile was bitter, savage. "I hope it hurts. I hope you feel even a fraction of what you put me through." She straightened her shoulders, rebuilding her armor. "But this conversation is over. I've moved on. I built a new life without you. A better life." And I don't need your apologies or your guilt or your regret. I need you to stay away from me and let me do my job." She turned to walk away. Trevor grabbed for her arm again, not roughly but firmly, needing her to hear him. She spun back with fury blazing in her eyes, hot enough to burn. "I said don't touch me." Her voice was deadly calm. "Touch me again, and I will have security remove you from this conference. I will file a complaint with the organizers. I will make your life professionally difficult in every way I can manage. Are we absolutely clear?" Trevor released her immediately, shocked by the venom in her voice. This wasn't just anger. This was something deeper, something protective and fierce that he didn't understand. She seemed almost afraid of him, or afraid of something. "Crystal clear," he said quietly. Jenna smoothed her dress, composed herself with visible effort, then walked away without looking back. Trevor watched her disappear into the ballroom, watched the door close behind her, and felt something inside him break open that he'd been keeping carefully sealed for 3 years. She'd moved on. She'd built a better life. She didn't need him. The truth of it settled into his bones like winter cold, permanent and numbing. He'd spent 3 years telling himself that someday he'd find her, apologize, make things right. He'd fantasized about grand gestures and tearful reconciliations, about her falling into his arms and forgiving him. But reality was standing in a hotel hallway alone, realizing that some things once broken could never be repaired. Some betrayals were too profound for forgiveness. Some love, once killed, stayed dead no matter how desperately you wished otherwise. That evening, Trevor didn't return to the conference. He sat in his hotel room, staring at nothing, replaying every moment of their conversation, analyzing every word and gesture. The way she'd flinched from his touch like he was toxic. The way her eyes had gone dead when she looked at him. The absolute certainty in her voice when she said she'd moved on. He'd thought losing her 3 years ago was the worst pain possible. But this was worse. This was seeing her alive and thriving and completely beyond his reach. Not because of distance or circumstance, but because he'd poisoned her love so thoroughly that not even its ghost remained. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant about tomorrow's meetings. Trevor ignored it. Instead, he made a decision he knew was wrong, but couldn't stop himself from making. He called a private investigator, someone discreet who'd done background checks for business acquisitions. "I need information on someone," Trevor said when the investigator answered. "Jenna Monroe. She lives somewhere on the West Coast, probably Portland or Seattle area. I just need to know if she's okay. Not detailed surveillance. Just general information about her current situation." "What kind of information?" "Living circumstances. Employment status. Whether she's—" Trevor paused, hating himself. "Whether she's involved with anyone. I'm not trying to intrude. I just need to understand if she needs help." The investigator agreed. Trevor wired the retainer, then spent another sleepless night imagining scenarios. Maybe she was married with stepchildren. Maybe she was divorced and struggling. Maybe the life she'd built was actually falling apart, and her coldness was protective armor over vulnerability. His mind spun through possibilities, none of them quite fitting what he'd witnessed. 3 days later, the investigator's call came while Trevor was reviewing acquisition documents in his Boston office. "I have preliminary information on Ms. Monroe," the investigator said. "She lives in Portland, works as an independent financial consultant with several regular clients. No criminal record, no debts, no obvious financial problems." Trevor waited, sensing there was more. However, there are some interesting patterns in her purchasing history and appointment schedules. Regular purchases at children's stores. Pediatrician appointments for 2 patients. Her apartment building lists her as the only adult resident, but neighbors report seeing her with 2 young children regularly. Trevor's world tilted sideways. "How old?" His voice came out strangled. Hard to say without direct observation, but based on the types of stores she frequents and items she purchases, preschool supplies, size 4T clothing, I'd estimate 3, maybe 4 years old. 3 years old. The number lodged in Trevor's brain like a bullet. 3 years since Jenna had left him. 3 years since that night at the gala when he destroyed everything. "I need you to find out more," Trevor heard himself say. "But carefully. I don't want her to know she's being observed. Confirm the children's ages. Find out if there's a father in the picture. Anything that helps me understand her situation. That's going to require more invasive methods. I don't care what it costs. I need to know." The investigator agreed and ended the call. Trevor sat at his desk, hands shaking, mind racing through impossible mathematics. If those children were 3 years old, if Jenna had been pregnant when he'd thrown her out, if he'd destroyed her while she was carrying his children, then everything he thought he knew about that night crumbled into dust. And the price of his mother's manipulation was infinitely higher than he'd ever imagined. 5 days later, the investigator's voice on the phone was matter-of-fact, clinical, like he was discussing stock portfolios instead of detonating Trevor's entire world. Confirmed. Ms. Monroe has 3-year-old twins, a boy and a girl. Names are Nate and Riley Monroe. No father listed on birth certificates. No record of child support payments. Hospital records indicate she gave birth alone at Portland General. She's been raising them as a single mother since birth. Trevor couldn't breathe. The walls of his hotel room closed in. "Mr. Ashford? Are you still there?" "Yeah." His voice sounded distant, unfamiliar. "Send me everything you have. The address, photographs if you got them, anything. Already in your email. Mr. Ashford, if you're the father, and the timeline certainly suggests you could be, she's kept them from you for their entire lives. You have legal rights here." Trevor ended the call and opened his laptop with trembling hands. The photographs loaded slowly, each pixel another nail in the coffin of his old life. A small boy with dark hair and eyes that were unmistakably Ashford eyes, the same eyes Trevor saw in his mirror every morning. A little girl with softer features, but that same stubborn chin, that same way of tilting her head when concentrating. His children. He had children in the world, and he'd never known. He'd missed everything. First words, first steps, birthdays, every milestone that mattered. And that ignorance was his own fault, built on the foundation of his mother's manipulation and his own willingness to believe the worst of a woman who'd loved him. Trevor sat in his rental car across from Jenna's apartment building, staring at the address that held his entire unknown world. Morning sun climbed higher. He watched residents leave for work, children heading to school with backpacks. Then at 8:30, the building's main door opened. Jenna emerged with 2 small children, one on each side, holding their hands. Trevor's breath caught in his throat. Even from across the street, even without seeing their faces clearly, biology sang recognition. The boy had his build, his way of moving. The girl had something in her posture that reminded him of his sister as a child. They were his. Every cell in his body knew it. He watched Jenna walk them toward the playground attached to the building complex, watched her help them onto swings, push them gently, her face transformed with love so pure it hurt to witness. This was the Jenna he remembered, all warmth and joy, but directed entirely at the children he'd never known existed. She laughed at something the boy said, kissed the girl's head when she asked for help with the slide. They were a family, complete without him. The realization was devastating. After an hour, they went back inside. Trevor sat in his car another 2 hours, paralyzed by indecision. Finally, he forced himself to move. He couldn't sit here forever. He had to confront her, had to demand answers, had to understand why she'd kept this secret for 3 years. That evening, Trevor stood outside Jenna's apartment door, his finger hovering over the buzzer. Every rational thought screamed at him to walk away, to hire lawyers, to approach this legally and carefully. But rational thought had abandoned him the moment he saw those photographs. He pressed the buzzer. Her voice came through the speaker, cautious. "Who is it?" "It's Trevor. I need to talk to you. Please, Jenna. It's important." Silence stretched so long he thought she might refuse. Then the door buzzed open. He climbed stairs to the 3rd floor and found her waiting in her doorway, arms crossed defensively. She looked exhausted, weary, and something else he couldn't identify. Fear, maybe. Or resignation. How did you find my address? Does it matter? Trevor forced himself to meet her eyes. I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Jenna's jaw tightened, but she stepped back, opening the door wider. You'd better come inside. The apartment was small, filled with evidence of the family he'd missed. Toys scattered across the living room. Children's drawings on the refrigerator. 2 small jackets hanging by the door. From the bedroom beyond, he could hear soft breathing. The twins sleeping peacefully, unaware that their entire world was about to change. Do I have children? Trevor's voice came out rough, desperate. Are there twins, 3 years old, living in this apartment? Are they mine? Jenna's face went through several expressions. Shock, anger, something that might have been relief. Yes, she said quietly. You have children. Nate and Riley. They're yours. She moved to the sofa, sat down like her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. And before you start making accusations and demanding rights, I need you to remember something. Her eyes met his, and he saw 3 years of struggle there. 3 years of survival and love and exhaustion. I tried to tell you that night. I was 8 weeks pregnant when you destroyed me at that gala. When you called me sick and threw me out of your life. When you wouldn't listen to a single word I tried to say. Her voice remained steady, but her hands trembled. So yes, I left. I disappeared. I built a life without you because I couldn't trust the man who believed I was capable of betrayal over the woman who'd loved him with everything she had. Trevor stared at her, hearing the words but struggling to process them. She'd tried. She'd been pregnant. He'd refused to listen. Every piece of this disaster traced back to his own choices, his own willingness to believe his mother's lies, his own failure to trust the woman he'd claimed to love. I need to meet them. The words came out hoarse. I need to know my children. I know you do. Jenna's expression was guarded but not hostile. That's why I let you in. But this happens on my terms, at my pace, in ways that protect them from being hurt. She leaned forward, intensity in every line of her body. You understand? You don't get to storm into their lives and play daddy for a while before disappearing again. Either you're all in, committed for the long term, or you stay away completely. I'm all in. Trevor's voice broke. Whatever it takes. Whatever you need. I'm there. We'll see. Skepticism colored her tone, built on 3 years of doing everything alone. Tomorrow, you can meet them briefly. We'll tell them you're a friend of mine. Then, if you prove consistent, if you show up when you say you will, if you put their needs first, we'll gradually tell them the truth. She stood, walked to the door, her message clear. But Trevor, if you hurt them the way you hurt me, I will take them somewhere you'll never find us. Are we clear? Crystal clear. Trevor looked toward the bedroom where his children slept. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this chance. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because they deserve to know their father, and you deserve to know them. What happens after that depends entirely on you. The next morning, Trevor arrived at 9:45, unable to wait until the appointed 10 o'clock. He'd spent the night rehearsing what to say, how to act, desperately reading articles about meeting children for the first time. Jenna opened the door, looking as nervous as he felt. They're having breakfast. I told them a friend of mine was coming to visit. Don't expect too much today. Just a brief introduction. Trevor followed her inside. At the small kitchen table sat 2 children eating pancakes. They looked up as he entered, and Trevor's breath caught. Seeing them from across the street hadn't prepared him for this, for seeing his own features reflected in miniature. Nate had his exact eyes, his dark hair with the stubborn colic Trevor remembered fighting every morning as a child. Riley had his mother's nose, the Ashford family nose, but with Jenna's warm skin and soft features. Nate, Riley, this is my friend Trevor, Jenna said, her voice carefully casual. He's visiting the city, and I thought you might like to meet him. Nate stared at Trevor with frank curiosity. Are you the one who made Mama cry last week? Jenna's eyes went wide. Trevor felt the question like a physical blow. Of course the children had noticed her distress after the conference. Of course they'd been aware that something was wrong. That was me, Trevor admitted. deciding honesty was the only path forward. I upset your mama a long time ago, and seeing me reminded her of that. I'm very sorry I made her cry. You should say sorry to her, not to us, Nate said seriously, with the moral certainty of a 3-year-old who understood right and wrong in absolute terms. You're absolutely right. Trevor looked at Jenna. I am sorry. For everything. Riley tugged on Jenna's sleeve. Mama, is he nice? I think so, baby. Why don't we all find out together? The next hour passed in a strange dream. Trevor sat at their small table drinking weak coffee from a chipped mug while Nate and Riley asked him questions with the directness of 3-year-olds who hadn't learned to filter curiosity. What did he do for work? Did he have any pets? Had he ever seen a real dinosaur? Could he do a handstand? Trevor answered as honestly as possible, trying to connect without overwhelming them. He learned that Nate loved dinosaurs, particularly velociraptors, and could recite facts about the Cretaceous period with impressive accuracy. Riley loved drawing flowers and wanted to be an artist when she grew up, or maybe a dancer, or possibly a veterinarian if that was still an option. They were brilliant and funny and completely their mother's children in the way they expressed themselves. But they had pieces of him too. Nate's stubborn determination. Riley's shy way of watching before deciding to trust. Do you have kids? Riley asked suddenly, looking at him with those eyes that were so like his own. Trevor glanced at Jenna, unsure how to answer. She gave the smallest nod. Permission to be truthful, within limits. Not that I knew about until very recently, Trevor said carefully. But I hope to spend time with some special children if they'll let me. Are we the special children? Nate asked. You might be. We'll have to see if we become friends first. Trevor smiled at them, his heart so full it physically ached. What do you think? Would you like to be friends with me? Both children looked at their mother for guidance. Jenna's expression was complicated, layered with emotions Trevor couldn't fully read. Finally, she nodded. I think you could try being friends, Nate said seriously. But you have to be nice to Mama. That's the rule. That's an excellent rule, Trevor agreed. I promise I'll be nice to your mama. And you can't make her cry again, Riley added, her voice firm despite her small size. I'll do everything I can to make sure that never happens again. The twins seemed satisfied. They returned to playing, occasionally glancing at Trevor to see if he was still there, gradually accepting his presence in their space. After another hour, Jenna suggested it was time for Trevor to go. He said goodbye, promising to visit again if their mother said it was okay. Outside in the hallway, Jenna followed him. That went better than I expected, she admitted. They usually take longer to warm up to strangers. Maybe they recognize something, Trevor said quietly. Maybe some part of them knows. Maybe. Jenna leaned against her doorframe. We need to talk about next steps. Paternity testing. Custody arrangements. How we're going to tell them the truth eventually. I want to do this right, Jenna. I want to be the father they deserve. And I want to support you, financially and otherwise. You shouldn't have had to struggle alone for 3 years. I'm not interested in your guilt money. Her voice sharpened defensively. It's not guilt. It's child support. It's what any court would order. They negotiated carefully. Trevor would visit twice a week, Wednesday evenings and Saturday mornings. Short visits, supervised by Jenna, building trust before complicating things with explanations about who he really was. Thank you, Trevor said as she started to close the door. Thank you for this chance. Don't thank me yet. Prove yourself first. 3 months later, the custody arrangement had become routine. Trevor visited Wednesday evenings and Saturday mornings like clockwork, never late, never making excuses. He'd learned that Nate got stubborn and argumentative when tired. He'd learned that Riley needed transition warnings before activities ended or she'd have emotional meltdowns. He'd also learned how much single parenthood had cost Jenna. She was exhausted constantly, juggling client work with childcare, handling everything alone. Watching her struggle, Trevor understood with devastating clarity how hard the 3 years he'd missed had been. Let me help more, he'd offered repeatedly. I can take them more nights. I can hire help to cover gaps in your schedule. I need to do this myself, she'd said every time. I need to be the one they depend on. But tonight, when he arrived for his Wednesday visit, Jenna's expression was troubled. "Can we talk after you get back from the park?" Trevor's stomach dropped. Those words never led anywhere good. "Everything okay? We'll talk later. Take the twins. They've been looking forward to it all week." The park visit was wonderful. Nate had mastered the monkey bars and insisted on demonstrating repeatedly. Riley made friends with another little girl, creating elaborate games involving unicorns and dragons. Then, licking chocolate ice cream from his fingers, Nate asked the question that changed everything. "Trevor, why don't you live with us?" The question came up periodically, and Trevor never had a good answer. "Because your mama and I have separate homes, buddy. That's how lots of families work." "But it would be better if you lived with us," Nate insisted, his 3-year-old logic simple and devastating. "Then you'd be there for breakfast and bedtime stories every day." "I wish you lived with us," Riley added wistfully. "Then you could read stories at bedtime." Trevor had no response that would satisfy them. Back at the apartment, after the twins went to wash up, Jenna looked nervous. "I got a job offer. A really good offer." Trevor waited, sensing the bomb about to drop. "It's a consulting firm in Denver. They want me to head their financial analysis division. It's triple what I make freelancing, with benefits and security and everything we need." Denver. The word dropped into Trevor's stomach like a stone. "I haven't decided yet, but Trevor, this is the kind of opportunity one can't turn down lightly. It would change everything for us. Better schools. Better neighborhood. I could stop worrying about money constantly." "What about me?" His voice came out rougher than intended. "What about my time with them?" "That's why I wanted to talk first." Jenna sat across from him. "We have a custody arrangement, and I won't violate it. But I need to know if you're willing to work with me. Long-distance parenting. Them flying back for visits, or you coming to Denver regularly." Trevor's mind reeled. Denver. Hundreds of miles away. His children growing up in another city. Weekend visits instead of Wednesday evenings. Missing school plays and soccer games and all the small moments that made up childhood. "I can't do long-distance parenting," he said. "I can't see them every other month and pretend that's enough." "I know. That's why I haven't accepted yet." Jenna's expression was pained. "Trevor, I need this opportunity. I need the financial security, the career advancement. But I also know you've been an amazing father these past 3 months." "Then don't go." The words came out desperate. "Stay here. I'll support you financially, cover whatever you need." "I don't want your support. I want to earn my own success." Her voice hardened. "I've been dependent on nothing and no one for 3 years. I'm not going to start now, just because it's convenient." They stared at each other across the small kitchen table. The same fundamental disconnect that had always existed between them. Smash that subscribe button right now if you want to see how this family heals. Because what Trevor does next, you're not going to believe it. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens. "What if I move to Denver too?" The words escaped before Trevor fully thought them through. Jenna blinked. "What? What if we both moved? You take the job. I relocate my operations. We maintain the custody arrangement in a new city. The twins don't have to choose between parents, and you get your career opportunity. You can't just relocate your entire company because I got a job offer. That's insane." "Why is it insane?" Trevor leaned forward. "Most of what I do can be done remotely. The few things that require in-person attention, I can handle with travel. We could find separate apartments in the same building. The twins could move between us easily. They'd have both parents. You'd have your career. I'd still be part of their daily lives." Jenna studied his face, searching for something. "You'd really do that? Uproot your entire life to follow me to Denver?" "I'd do it for them. I'd do it to be part of their lives in meaningful ways instead of phone calls and occasional visits. Being their father matters more than where my office is located." "This isn't about us," Jenna said firmly. "This wouldn't be us getting back together. This would be co-parenting logistics." "I know, but Trevor's heart was asking for everything. I'm not asking for anything except the chance to stay involved in their lives. Let me think about it. I have a week before I need to give the firm an answer." Jenna stood, signaling the conversation was over. Don't say anything to the twins yet. I don't want them getting excited or worried before we know what's happening. 1 week later. I'm taking the job, Jenna said when Trevor arrived. And if you're serious about relocating, we'll figure out how to make that work. But Trevor, I need you to understand something. This is about being good parents. You're doing this for Nate and Riley, not to win me back. I know, Trevor said. Whatever happens between us is separate from being their father. Okay then, let's do this. Let's move to Denver and figure out how to make co-parenting work in a new city. 6 months later. The move happened quickly. Jenna relocated first. Trevor followed 2 weeks later, finding an apartment 3 blocks from hers. The twins adjusted surprisingly well, excited about their new neighborhood, new preschool, the adventure of a different city. Trevor established a routine, picking them up from preschool twice a week, having them overnight on weekends. He learned the new parks, the best ice cream shops, the library with a good children's section. And slowly, agonizingly slowly, something began to heal between him and Jenna. Not romantic love, that was too damaged, but a partnership built on their shared love for Nate and Riley. They communicated daily about the children. They made decisions together. They presented a united front. 4 months into their new arrangement, on a crisp autumn morning, Trevor took the twins to a park near Jenna's apartment. Watch, Daddy. Nate took off on his small bike, pedaling furiously. Riley cheered from the sidelines. Trevor watched his son ride in circles, pride swelling so intensely it hurt. This was what he'd been missing. These moments of pure childhood triumph. Did you see? Nate skidded to a stop, breathless and grinning. I saw. That was incredible, buddy. Trevor scooped him up, bike and all, spinning him around. Riley tugged his sleeve. Daddy, I have something to show you too. She led him to a park bench where she'd hidden a drawing. It showed 4 stick figures in front of a house, all holding hands. Above it in careful 3-year-old letters, Our Family. Trevor's throat closed. He knelt to her level. This is beautiful, sweetheart. Who are these people? That's you and Mama, and me and Nate. We're a family. She said it with such certainty, such simple faith. We are a family, Trevor confirmed. A very special family. But we don't all live together. Why not? The question cut straight to the heart of everything complicated between him and Jenna. Because sometimes families live in different houses. That's okay. It doesn't make us less of a family. But I want us all together, Riley said, her eyes filling with tears. I want you to live with us. Trevor pulled her close, feeling her small body shake with tears she didn't fully understand. Nate abandoned his bike and joined them, wrapping his arms around both of them. In that moment, kneeling on the grass with his children clinging to him, Trevor understood what he needed to do. He needed to stop being afraid, stop protecting himself from potential rejection, stop accepting half measures when his children deserved everything. That evening, after returning the twins to Jenna, Trevor asked if they could talk. They sat in her small living room while the children played in their bedroom. The apartment had become familiar over these months. The worn sofa, the crayon marks on the wall Jenna kept meaning to clean, the scattered toys that spoke of life being lived. The twins asked again why we don't all live together, Trevor started. They ask me that constantly. Jenna's expression was guarded. I tell them the same thing you probably do, that families come in different forms. What if we stopped giving them that answer? Trevor's heart pounded against his ribs. What if we actually became the family they're asking for? Jenna stared at him. Trevor, what are you saying? I'm saying I love you. The words rushed out, desperate and raw. I never stopped loving you. I know I destroyed us 3 years ago. I know I don't deserve a second chance. But I'm asking for one anyway. He leaned forward, hands clasped between his knees. Not because I've earned it, but because I can't keep pretending I don't want us to be a real family. This is about the kids asking questions. Jenna's voice was carefully controlled. You're feeling guilty because they want something we can't give them. No. Trevor shook his head. This is about me finally being brave enough to tell you the truth. I love you, Jenna. I love who you are now, who you've always been, who you've become through everything you've survived. His voice cracked. I love your strength and your fierceness, and the way you protect our children. I love how you've given me chances I don't deserve and held me accountable when I failed. I love everything about you, and I can't keep pretending I don't. Tears spilled down Jenna's cheeks. You hurt me so badly. You destroyed me, Trevor. I don't know if I can trust you with my heart again. I know. Trevor felt his own eyes burning. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I'm asking you to forgive me anyway. I'm asking you to give me the chance to spend the rest of my life proving I've changed, proving I choose you, proving I'll fight for us instead of running when things get hard. What if you hurt me again? Her voice broke. What if your words are pretty now, but you revert to the man who believed lies over truth? Then you leave, and I live with the consequences. Trevor's hands trembled. But Jenna, I've spent 6 months proving I'm different. I moved to a new city for our children. I've shown up consistently. I've put you and them first in every decision. At some point, you have to decide whether I've proven myself enough to risk trusting me. Jenna was quiet for a long time, tears streaming silently down her face. Trevor waited, knowing everything hinged on this moment. I don't forgive you, she said finally. Not completely. Not yet. What you did 3 years ago still hurts. She wiped her eyes with shaking hands. But I can see you've changed. I can see you're trying. And maybe that's enough to start with. Start what? Start trying. Jenna's voice was barely a whisper. Start seeing if we can be more than co-parents. Start building something new that honors what we lost while creating something better. She looked at him directly. But Trevor, if you hurt me again, if you prove this is just guilt or obligation, we're done. Not just romantically. You'll be the father who sees his kids according to a court schedule and nothing more. Understood? Understood. Trevor stood, then dropped to his knees in front of her. I won't hurt you again. I swear on our children's lives, I won't hurt you again. Jenna stood and looked down at him for a long moment. Then she held out her hand. Trevor took it, and she pulled him to his feet. He gathered her gently into his arms. She resisted briefly, then melted against him. For the first time in 3 years, they held each other without anger or fear between them. This is terrifying, she whispered against his chest. I know, but we'll figure it out together. They stood like that for a long time, two people who destroyed and rebuilt each other, learning to trust again, learning to hope again. From the bedroom, Rosie called out, Mama, Daddy, can you both come tuck us in? Trevor and Jenna pulled apart, looked at each other, and smiled. Together, they walked to their children's room. They read stories side by side, kissed foreheads, whispered good nights in harmony. As they left the room, Nate called out one more time, Are you staying tonight, Daddy? Trevor looked at Jenna. She nodded. Permission granted. Yeah, buddy. I'm staying tonight. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows as Trevor and Jenna made breakfast together. Pancakes and scrambled eggs, coffee brewing, the comfortable dance of two people learning to share space again. Nate and Riley emerged from their bedroom, rubbing sleep from their eyes. Then they saw both parents in the kitchen together, and their faces transformed with joy so pure it made Trevor's chest ache. Daddy stayed. Riley ran to him, wrapping her arms around his legs. Is Daddy living with us now? Nate asked, hope bright in his eyes. Trevor looked at Jenna. She smiled, tentative but real. We're trying it out, Jenna said, to see if we can all be together. Would you like that? Both children screamed with excitement, jumping and hugging and radiating the kind of happiness that made every moment of pain worthwhile. If this story touched your heart, do me a favor, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment telling me, do you believe in second chances? Let's talk about it. Hit that like button if you believe love can heal even the deepest wounds. 6 months ago, Trevor had fallen to his knees in that Denver park, watching his children play, surrendering his pride and control and fear. He'd knelt in the grass with Nate and Riley clinging to him, understanding that some things mattered more than protecting himself from pain. Now, watching his family eat breakfast together, Jenna laughing at something Nate said, Riley showing him her latest drawing, the morning light making everything golden, Trevor understood what redemption actually meant. It wasn't a single moment of apology. It wasn't grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was showing up every single day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. It was choosing love over pride, presence over convenience, family over everything else. It was learning that some betrayals, while seemingly unforgivable, could be healed through consistent action, genuine change, and the grace of a woman strong enough to risk her heart one more time. Trevor had destroyed the woman he loved and driven her away while she carried his children. He'd spent 3 years missing their lives because he'd been too weak to stand up to manipulation, too willing to believe comfortable lies. Some mistakes couldn't be fixed. Some damage was permanent. But if you were willing to do the work, if you showed up consistently, if you proved through actions rather than words that you'd changed, if you loved fiercely and humbly and without conditions, then maybe, just maybe, even the most shattered foundations could be rebuilt. Family wasn't just blood. It wasn't just biology or legal documents or shared history. Family was choice. It was presence. It was showing up every single day and saying, "I choose you," through actions that spoke louder than any words ever could. Trevor had fallen to his knees, surrendering everything. Now he was rising again, not alone, but lifted by the love of the family he'd almost destroyed and been given the grace to rebuild.